You've heard the legend. Vikings raised sons to be wolves of the sea, not lambs for the altar. But buried beneath the hero songs lies a colder truth. Law could turn fathers into executioners. Not a berserker's frenzy, a courtroom's verdict. Tonight, we walk into the Thing, the Viking assembly, where words were weapons, oaths were iron, and a single legal duty could force a man to shed his own bloodline. Myth says chaos, reality says order, an order so harsh it demanded sacrifice. If you value documented history like this, raw and unfiltered, hit subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Start with the law, not the sword. Norse societies ran on Thing assemblies, with law speakers reciting ancestral codes in the open air. These weren't distant scrolls, they were living memory, held in the mouths of men and carved into verdicts. In these laws, honor wasn't a feeling, it was a debt ledger. Blood was currency. And at the center of that economy, the father. He claimed a child. He named a child. He was bound to avenge a child. Or, if the law demanded, he was bound to punish a child. There's a rule in early medieval Scandinavia that chills the heart. A household head may be compelled to exact lawful vengeance even upon his own kin to preserve honor and avoid outlawry. Outlawry meant civil death. Anyone could kill you without penalty. Refuse to act and you became the hunted. Act and you might become the executioner of your own bloodline. The sagas remember this in the throb of their silences. They rarely say, a father killed a son outright, but they trap fathers in the vice of legal duty and blood feud, forcing decisions that feel like ritual sacrifice. Law as altar, the Thing as temple. Listen to the crackle. In Njáls saga, the farm at Bergthor's hold burns like a pyre. Inside is Skarphedin, the razor-tongued son whose feud work has stacked corpses like cordwood. Outside stand the burners, blades ready, torches high. Njal, the father, sits calm in smoke. He chooses not to flee. He chooses not to forsake his sons. The law has cornered him. Arbitrations failed, homicides piled, compensation refused. The Thing could no longer save them. Fire would finish what verdicts began. There is no ceremonial knife, there is no priest, but the structure is ritual. Cause, case, decree, doom. Njal's sons die in the law's blaze. He could not kill them, so the system did, through men who were right by verdict, wrong by humanity. As the saga records, the father's silence is the loudest stroke of the axe. Another clause, older and colder, rings from pre-Christian practice. The father takes up the newborn, acknowledgement that makes the child a legal person. Refuse to lift, and the infant could be left outside, exposed. The archaeology is spare, the texts shadowed, but the custom is persistent. The father as gatekeeper to life, the law as doorframe. Tacitus hints at northern exposures. Later Norse sources remember the choice. Anthropologists trace the practice across pagan Europe, and medieval Christian bishops in Scandinavia condemned it as the new faith took hold. Is that sacrifice? Not in a temple sense, but it is deliberate surrender of a life to necessity, poverty, deformity, shame, or calculation. A father's decision, legal, final. Hear the wind over the lava plains of Thingvellir. A father stands in the ring of law. His son, blood on his tunic, eyes smoldering, has kept feud when compensation was offered, has struck after truce, has broken foster ties. The prosecuting kin recites the steps, summons, witnesses, injury. Outlawry is declared. The law speaker's voice is flat as iron on an anvil, full outlaw. No food, no shelter, no aid. To harbor the boy is itself a crime. To protect him is to join him in the wilderness of legal death. The father's choice is bleak as winter sea. He can drive the son out, He can turn his face away when the blades come. Or he can do what is worse. He can be the first to strike, showing he stands with law, not blood. In this world, sometimes that happened. The sagas whisper it in euphemisms. He did what was needful. He would not stand between them. The father gave him no quarter. Back to the story. What happened next will chill you. Not all sacrifices are children, but the framework matters. In Eyrbyggja saga, when men swear at Thor's temple, oaths bind like fetters, violation draws disaster. The law and the cult were intertwined. Temple owners hosted things. Chieftains were both priests and judges. When a son violated an oath sworn on a temple ring, he wasn't merely a criminal. He was a rupture in the fabric that kept community alive. Picture a chieftain father in Sogn or Hordaland, before the Gulathing. His son has defiled a peace oath. The penalties in the law code list fines and compensations, but when peace gods are mocked and the feud runs red, fines fail. The father's authority, his mund, his guardianship, must be restored. He stands, jaw tight. He announces he will not pay for the boy's breach. He will not shield him. He will pursue the case himself. It is a legal metaphor that tastes like blood. In doing so, he signals that if the son resists, he will strike the first blow.
The genius and terror of Viking law is its impersonality. Men recited rules. Rules made killers. A man must avenge his kin, the ethic says. A man must stand for the settlement, the assembly replies. Caught between feud and fine, between oath and mercy, the father becomes a hinge that swings toward blood. The Grágás mentions harboring outlaws as punishable, sometimes by sharing their outlawry. The Gulathing law registers the costs of homicide and the calibrated payments for injury, names, numbers, neat columns of debt. These are the bones under saga flesh. When the system failed to contain violence, it deputized families to enforce the verdicts. And who is family, if not the father? At a narrow river crossing, steel meets waterlight. In Laxdæla saga, king groups clash in spirals of obligation and retaliation. Fathers declare neutrality and are dragged to one side by honor. Sons court disaster. Fines are offered, then spat upon. One father watches his son cut a man under truce. The thing is days away, but the witnesses already exist. Eyes, ears, breath. The father rides ahead of the news. He knocks on doors to warn neighbors he will not shield his son. He stands in the open when the avengers arrive. He does not lift his spear, but he does not close his gate. In Viking terms, that is consent. In legal terms, that is collaboration. By not harboring him, he grants the kill. By granting the kill, he condemns his blood. The river runs. The saga moves on. But the law has turned a father's love into a signature below a death sentence. Was there a law that said, "Kill your son"? No. There was a web that said, "Do your duty." And sometimes duty meant cutting down the branch that grew from your own trunk. The Vikings knew of literal child sacrifice from older myths and enemy accusations, but in their own texts, the sacrifice most often wears legal clothes. Olaf's saga Tryggvasonar praises the Christian kings who ban exposure. Adam of Bremen condemns pagan rites at Uppsala. Adam of Bremen, Gesta Hammergensis. The Eddas tell of gods who sacrifice parts of themselves for wisdom, for order. Havamal, Voluspala. Fathers mirrored gods when they paid a piece of themselves to keep the world upright. Archaeology won't give us a signed confession, but it sketches the room where decisions were made. Burials show children interred with care, with amulets and beads. Others show trauma. A few sites hint at ritual contexts, though scholars debate, sacrifice or execution. The lines blur when law is sacred and temple is courthouse. At Hofstaðir in Iceland, a great hall with butchery remains speaks of feasting and formal gatherings, places where verdicts could have been announced, oaths sworn, fates set. The world of the thing is not a footnote, it's a landscape of choices. Enter King Olaf Tryggvasonar, sword of baptism. He outlaws exposure and pushes Christian penance into the heart of law. Fathers are commanded to protect children. Priests replace Goðaf at the center of assemblies. But the sagas, written after conversion, still remember the old engine. They are haunted by fathers standing aside, by the lawful kill, by sons driven to the scrublands with winter at their heels. Conversion changed the surface. Honor's accounting still ran deep. Imagine a farmer at the Frostathing. His son has knifed a man inside the sanctuary fence. That's a boundary crime, sacrilege against the thing itself. The penalty is harsh. The prosecutor recites. The defense falters. Witnesses step forward, clear-voiced. Outlawry. The turn turns to his father. Not help me, not save me, just eyes that know the law's weight. The father's jaw moves once. Go. He rides home. He walks into his hall, and he tells his wife to bar the loft. If the boy comes by night, he will not be let in. In that refusal is the blade. The man sleeps facing the door with his spear across his knees, because if his son tries to break the law, the first battle will be father against child. He is not a murderer. He is an agent of order. He is a sacrificial priest without a temple. How did the law force his hand? Harboring an outlaw was itself an offense, punishable by fines or outlawry. Kin were expected to either prosecute or assist in enforcement. Failure damaged honor and invited countersuits. Blood feud, if uncontained by settlement, metastasized into community threat. Neighbors pressured fathers to act. No decree said, "Kill your son," but every path away from it led to ruin. At the Icelandic Althing, the law speaker recited a third of the law each summer from the law rock. Think of that voice, steady, unweeping. Such and such a wound is worth 3 marks. Such and such a trespass is to be paid in cattle. Numbers, names, and here the cold line. Outlawry stands. Once spoken, it was as firm as carved runes. The father's options collapsed to a single line, the line of duty. In Egil's saga, fathers and foster fathers wield authority that cuts both ways. Skallagrimr, Egil's father, is brutal in discipline. He nearly drowns a playmate in a fit of rage, and he is unflinching in family law. Later, Egil himself enforces vengeance with pitiless precision. Now imagine a foster father facing a foster son who has broken oath. Fosterage was sacred. Breaking it was a social and legal fracture. A foster father obligated to uphold law might pursue the boy. He might arrest him at a feast. He might, if cornered, strike first. Not his blood, but in Viking logic, sometimes dearer than blood. Even love could not outrun legislation.
We forget the violence of words. The Norse didn't. To name someone outlaw was to strip him of frith, peace protection. He became meat on the hoof. A father who spoke that word, or who refused the word harbor, wielded a sharper blade than iron. Viking rage makes headlines. Viking bookkeeping made history. Grágás is meticulous. Injury tariffs list teeth, fingers, even the insult of pulling someone's nose.
The Gulathing law balances king and farmer, church and farm. Into this precise lattice fell boys who made the wrong cut with a seax. Precision can kill more cleanly than passion. A father meets his outlaw son in the birch grove at dawn. The boy asks for 1 day's food, just 1 day. The father places bread on a stump outside the fence. He watches from the boundary. He does not cross it. He will not share a hearth with lawlessness. He will not be fined. He lets his son eat like a wolf. It looks like mercy. It is an execution stretched over days. By the 11th and 12th centuries, Christian kings codify mercy. Outlawry persists, but bishops push for sanctuary and penance. Exposure is condemned. Infant baptism becomes protection. Fathers are charged with nurture, not selection. Christian law sections in Grágás and Norwegian church laws. But the sagas, written under the quill of Christian Icelanders, are obsessed with the older crucible. Why? Because even with crosses above the door, the old questions remained. When the law calls, do you answer with blood? In a coastal district under the Frostathing, a shipowner's son kills a man over a beached whale. Whale rights are regulated. Shares are counted. The son takes more than his due, is called thief, and answers with steel. At the thing, evidence is clean. The father speaks for the family. He is measured, honor bright. He offers compensation. He bends the knee to custom. The other side refuses. Blood for blood, they demand. The assembly murmurs. The law speaker nods. Full outlawry. The father walks home along the strand, gulls complaining overhead. He knows what the verdict means. His son will run to him. He will arrive at night, salt in his hair, pleading. The father opens his hall. The men sit in silence. The women bar the loft. The hearth pops and mutters as if gossiping about doom. When the door finally opens, the father rises. The son stops, hands open, palms facing the firelight. I will not harbor you, the father says. Father. The older man places a sack on the threshold. Bread, knife, whetstone. He does not step over. If he does, he breaks law. If he breaks law, he drags them all into darkness. He says, go north, keep to the moors. A shape moves in the shadows outside, neighbors or hunters or kin of the dead. The father turns his face so they can see it in the door glow. He is witness. He is boundary. He is verdict. The son takes the sack. He vanishes into the cold. The watchers follow. In the morning, the bench where the boy sat is just wood. The father pours ale twice and drinks both. He rides to the thing next summer and pays the last of the fees. He speaks low and steady. He does not mention the night. He does not need to. The system worked. It cost him everything. Sagas rarely show a father's hand striking the death blow to his son. They show fathers as the law's hinge, as the consent that kills. They show the decision to disown, to refuse food, to open the gate and stand aside. They show the community nodding, because the alternative is chaos. In these silences is the truth. The law didn't need to demand patricide. It made it unnecessary by making fathers its instruments. Why did fathers comply? Because honor was public credit, because neighbors watched, because cattle needed grazing, and trade ships needed harbors, and no man survives as a lone wolf on a lava field. The law promised predictability in a world of storms. Fathers sacrificed so their other children could inherit order. Years later, a traveler pauses at a low stone on a ridge above a fjord. No runes cut, just weather-licked granite. An old man stands beside it. "They say your son died up here," the traveler whispers. The old man doesn't correct him. He just says, "The law was kept." And in those 4 words, he both condemns and absolves himself. We hunger for heroes. We fear systems. The Viking world gives us both. Men of iron yoked to words of iron. We prefer the myth of berserkers because it lets us blame blood. The reality of law makes us ask harder questions about duty, community, and the price of order. When a rule is carved hard enough, it cuts. And sometimes it cuts where we bleed most.
So, was there one Viking law that forced fathers to sacrifice sons? Not a single sentence, a single mechanism. Outlawry and the duties that radiated from it, enforced by the Thing, embedded in Grágás and Norwegian codes, and dramatized in the sagas. Refuse, and you join the condemned. Comply, and you sanction your own child's death. That is the law's altar. That is the sacrifice. We walked the Thing fields. We watched the blaze at Bergthorshvoll. We heard the flat voice of a law speaker turn breath into doom. We saw a father step back so the blade could step forward. And we learned that Vikings did not kill because they were wild. They killed because they were ruled. Back to the story. What happened next will chill you. Here's the lesson. Systems promise safety, but demand obedience. When obedience is absolute, the system starts asking for sacrifices it has no right to take. The Norse world shows us this in granite clarity. Fathers made into levers, love bent into law, children lost to the ledger. We still live with echoes, policies that punish families, rules that make compassion a crime, communities that prize order until order freezes into cruelty. Viking history doesn't just entertain, it warns. It says, know your laws, question their costs, and remember that the hardest policy to refuse is the one that asks you to harm the people you love. If this unearthed Viking shadows for you, like and subscribe for the series. Next episode, we open the whale bones of honor, when a single insult cost a farm, a marriage, and a chieftain's life. Written and researched with attention to Norse legal codes and saga narratives. Where the record is silent, we followed the grain of the wood, not the invention of the knife.